was only just a century ago that the idea of anyone flying would have been considered mad and probably impossible. But the timeline from the Wright brothers to actual flying is one of the fastest known, and it includes many Irish stories in its rapid evolution. One of those stories was lost for a long time, until in the mid-2021, just past mid-June, along a road filled with an urgent population rushing by, a piece of forgotten but lovingly restored Irish aviation history is rolled out into the light. This skeleton of wood represents the earliest built airplane in the Republic of Ireland, designed not by some famous name, but by a hard-working firm of car mechanics from the centre of what was known as Maryborough, later named Portlaoise.
It was designed and constructed by a family in Portlaoise called the Aldred family. The Aldred brothers had an engineering works, let's call it. Some people might say a garage, but that's what it was in latter years. And they were involved in building the first motor car in Ireland.
Aviation at this time was the new thing, the new kid on the block. And the Aldreds were engineers.
They were obviously involved in innovation and new technologies, and they wanted to be part of that action too. So they went across on a boat to Blackpool, where there was a very famous aviation get-together, and it was there they would have got ideas from Blériot's plan and designs how to construct and build an airplane.
Excited by seeing this new Blériot monoplane, as soon as they came home, the Aldreds must have started on their designs. With so much wood involved in their new plane, they needed to call on the skills of another local man, Johnny Conroy, a master craftsman who is responsible for all of the intricate carpentry on the fuselage and wings, a point remembered in an interview in a local newspaper many years later. A testament to the quality of his work is much of his original woodwork still exists today, holding the plane together, just as it did over a century ago. The existence of a plane in the Aldred garage was known about in the area, as Teddy remembers.
What I do remember is, in going to school, I passed Aldred's garage, and there on the rafters you could see a skeleton of something or other, which was actually a plane. And as young fellas, we were always interested to know what exactly that was about.
Teddy wasn't the only local that remembered the plane. A young 16-year-old James Fitzmaurice remembered helping to build and watching the plane fly.
In Fitzmaurice's memoirs, which was the part of it was never published his earlier life, he said that he was there as a young boy. He went to the field, which was very near the Aldred's garage, where they wheeled out the plane, and he saw it taking up speed and eventually rising. And unfortunately, he said, it came back down.
Kings County Chronicle, Parsonstown, 4th of November 1909. A few days ago we alluded to the inventive skill of a Burman in the field of aviation. In view of this, it will be of interest that during last week, two brothers, Lewis and Frank Aldred, engineers of Maryborough, have succeeded in the presence of some friends in covering a short distance in a small plane. The young men possess a high degree of mechanical skill and have refused orders from firms across the Channel owing to a love of their native town.
But far from being remembered and preserved, the skeleton of the Portlaoise Flyer seemed to have been consigned to the workshop roof and eventually quietly disappear.
I would say it was forgotten about more than anything else, rather than disappeared. A man who lives in England and who comes from Portlaoise actually resurrected the story again, because he wrote in some journal about his experience when visiting a private museum in East Sussex in England. And he said he went to see a lot of the vintage cars, but what he hadn't expected was a plane in the rafters of the museum. And when he inquired from the owner of the museum what it was, he was told it was Aldrich's aircraft. We said, let's find out more about this relic. So we decided to go and visit the museum ourselves. And here it was, the skeleton in the rafters, almost like the picture, the one picture that we have of it in Aldrich's garage, up in the rafters.
After several attempts over some time, Teddy eventually managed to persuade the collector to sell the plane, and they had it shipped back to Ireland.
So we got it back anyway, and we stored it in a warehouse in Dublin. And we sent out word to aviation people that were interested in the story. Two restorers in particular had a look at it. Two people that have experience in restoring old aircraft. Brendan O'Donoghue and Johnny Malloy, well known in their own right.
I thought I was mad, and I thought Teddy and Alan were mad as well. But I did have thoughts about it, and then I saw that, when they told me all the history of it, I caught on. Normally, I've never worked on an aircraft that's not going to fly, and this one wasn't going to fly. I knew that, but yes, I was interested.
Well, what we see here, the fuselage was more or less intact when we found it in the UK, as were the wings. Now, some of it had decomposed a little bit, so I would say, in my estimation, about 70% of the plane exists.
What was missing, the main parts that were missing, and they were missing before it was purchased, was the engine, which was a pity, and the propeller was missing.
Although the Flyer today sits on a temporary undercarriage and sporting a stand-in propeller, among the rest of the original pieces were some very innovative ideas.
There's no other aircraft in Ireland with bamboo spars, or even part of a wing with bamboo spars. It'd be impossible to get 4 lengths of timber that 19 foot long. It would be impossible. And also weight, Oh God, no, bamboo, and they were straight bamboo. And mind you, they're over 100 years old, and look at them now, they're still straight. I don't know of any other aircraft with bamboo spars, so it's a very unique aircraft, I think.
As to whether it would actually fly, a Queen's University postgrad, Brian Chow, input the characteristics of the Portlaoise Flyer into a flight simulator, and that showed that the plane, with just a few modifications, would have definitely flown freely.
Work was done on a voluntary basis, which is incredible. They took such an interest in being involved in this, and they realise the value of having this, not only for themselves, but for Ireland.
Without the expertise and knowledge of Brendan Donoghue and Johnny Malloy, who without them, we wouldn't have got as far as we have today. They've brought in their expertise and their network of people. I mean, reconstructing the wings and the tailpiece was something of a skill that's almost forgotten. And without those skilled artisans and craftsmen, we wouldn't have got where we are today.
I've had airline pilots here, both flying and retired, and they were really interested in it because they realised this is where aviation began. And if you look at it, this is what aviation began with. And Ireland has been the forefront of aviation worldwide, and still is the forefront of aviation worldwide. And when you see this, okay, it's a few pieces of wood stuck together and all of that, but now you see jumbo jets and Airbuses. They've even gone to the moon in less than 100 years. That's, to me, advancement.
But it's the whole story around the engineering, the innovation, you know, what was going on at the time, and we've preserved it, and we hope to bring it to a wider audience and show it hopefully by the end of this year.
I have a dream of seeing this, I don't even know exactly where, but somewhere in Portlaoise, hanging from a roof, that when people walk in, this is the centrepiece of the museum, that they can see that the history of flight in Ireland started in Portlaoise, and that it's got this massive connection to not just this plane with the Aldrits, but also Colonel Fitzmaurice, who we know worked with the Aldrits on this plane, and the massive achievement of the transatlantic flight, and how we haven't really paid proper homage to that. And to do justice to that story, you really need a key artefact like this. This is the key of that story. And I'd love to see the centre of a museum with the plane hanging from the roof, that people can see the Aldrits plane in flight as it was supposed to be.
Will a flying museum ever come to fruition in Portlaoise? To quote Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. Tickets, anyone?
I am very, very happy and proud that we were able to do what we did. And I'd like the people of the area and the people of Ireland who are interested in it to see it there and to see it as it was.